Hi everybody, and welcome to the Mind Body Connective. This is episode 4. My name's Steph Unthank, and this is my friend and colleague Bridget Sunman. And this is episode 4. Hopefully by now you've indulged in our first 3 episodes in listening to us having some really great conversations around the connection between the mind and body, and particularly looking at topics like what is the mind, looking at how stress affects us and our minds and our bodies. And today we're going to be talking a bit more about body. So so we're here today, Bridget. It's good to see you. How have you been?
Yeah, I've been good actually. Yeah, really good. I've been liking this sort of touch of spring that's going on at the
No, it's
moment.
lovely, isn't
So
it?
really nice. The sunshine makes you feel good, doesn't it?
It does
Much
make you
better.
feel good. Yeah, it does make. It sounds a bit cliche, I think, but actually, I really do believe it does make you feel good. Totally.
Well, it does. I think you stop noticing all those aches and pains. And I know we're going to be talking about pain today, and it's a fascinating subject. And I probably want to say that I'm not a medically trained person, so these are all
Sure.
just my expressions of what I found and what I found with working the clients that I work with. But yeah, it's a fascinating subject. It reminds me a little bit of the conversation we were having with stress, because I feel that there can be good pain, and I think there can be bad pain. And I think when I look back to my sort of time when I was sort of in gyms and the sort of training regimes then about feeling the burn and
Yeah.
getting the buzz of adrenaline, and sometimes that would involve getting to the edge of pain, but it almost felt like a good pain. And then I think with bad pain, sometimes for me it's much clearer, and yet it can be vague for other people. If they don't notice their pain, it can be very cumulative around maybe stress in the body. And a lot of the work I've done is training around noticing where stress is in the body, in my own body,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
attention. But things like obvious pain, well, yeah, if you fall over and break your leg, that is largely going to hurt whoever you are, no matter how your tolerance is. um, and just things like sunburn, though, I could spend a day out, you could spend a day out in the sun. We might have very, very different experiences of that pain,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and how we notice that pain.
Mm.
So, what about you? What do you think about good pain and bad pain?
Well, I think oddly that bad pain for me gives you a signal that you're alive. you know.
Yeah.
There's an old saying that all the time you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you, right? Which I know that might sound a bit crass. Apologise for anybody who's watching this and thinking, what is she talking about? But there's some truth in that. And I think that when you experience pain, and I'm not actually, just to be really clear on this, I'm not talking about long-term sufferers of chronic pain. I'm fortunate enough to not be one of those people in my life. So but I know that some people do suffer from long-term chronic pain, and it is debilitating. It takes over your life, and I've worked with individual clients in the past that have suffered from long-term chronic pain. So I can only come to that from a place of trying to empathize and understand, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I think good pain, bad pain. So good pain, I think you're right. I think that there's been a lot of maybe there's a sense of, not a lot of, but there's a sense of that good pain can sometimes be related to the things that we do that we believe make us feel good. And as a result of that, feeling pain means that we've hit that threshold, we've done really well, right? So how many press ups, or how much you've run, or how much weight you've lifted,
Bit
but
like
didn't
a
I do
badge of
well?
honor.
Yeah, exactly
Badge of
that.
honor.
Didn't I do well? It's like a badge of honor. So I think there's that kind of good pain. And then,
Yeah.
from an exercise perspective, you might wake up the next day and have that kind of delayed onset sort of muscle
Yeah.
soreness. And I think that
Yeah.
that sometimes is a good pain. It's like, oh, I can barely walk, but didn't I do well yesterday? So I think there is that kind of good pain. But I do honestly think as well, I really mean this, is that when we feel pain in our bodies, it is a sign of the fact that we are alive, and that this body is working in some way. And I do think that good pain can be a very good signal in terms of it's telling us something that we need to know.
Yeah, I think the signaling thing is very important, and I think it's a really good point. How often do we actually pay attention to them? How often do we actually stop for a moment, through the day, and actually just notice where there is maybe a bit of discomfort and a bit of pain? And
Yeah.
as you say, it doesn't have to be at that far extreme. Just noticing that actually might make us choose to do something about it and do something
Completely.
different. So I like that. I like the fact that, you know, it reminds us that we're alive.
Yeah.
We're not just this sort of dull sort of, you know,
Robot.
mob
Yeah.
that
Yeah. An experience that I'm having at the moment, it's a personal experience, is I've just been diagnosed with 2 degenerative vertebrae at the top of my spine, and it's not debilitating at all, but it's there. And I'm having physio for it. I had some extreme therapy on my back called, I don't know if you know about this, Bridget, dry needling, which is
Oh
like,
yeah, I think you mentioned it, but I wasn't sure what
yeah.
it was.
So yeah, it's a bit like acupuncture, but about 1,000 times more uncomfortable. But anyway, I'm having this kind of physio for the back of my neck, but I'm very aware of that being there, and I am constantly aware of my posture, constantly aware of the kind of the protraction or the forward and backness of my jaw and my chin, and where that's going, because it's to do with the fact that I've got a problem with the muscles, the way that my head's been held up, as it were. And I think that's a good pain, because it sends me the signals that tell me to move. And maybe you could say that prior to this problem, I wouldn't have moved as much because I didn't feel the pain, and maybe that would have been a better place to be. But now I'm with this condition, and actually the good pain gives me the signals that I need, tells my brain there's something not quite right there, Steph, you need to get up and move around, or you need to go and do your exercises that the physio has given you. So I think in that sense, it can be useful to be able to, as you say, isn't it funny, Bridget, every time we have these conversations, we come back to those 2 things, awareness and choice.
Awareness and choice. I think really interesting to hear you talk about posture as well. You know, it's brought you into real direct contact with your posture. And again, you know, yes, it's problematic for you, but you can see how actually by paying attention to it now and doing something about it, you're actually benefiting your body.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes we get these reminders because you know, we're not paying attention, I think, or we haven't paid attention. So, and I'm really interested in this cumulative effect. Again, like we were talking about with stress, you know, I really feel there's a cumulative effect with pain as well, and we can numb ourselves. We've talked about autopilot. I'd probably bring that in again as well, how we can just, you know, keep going sometimes regardless, and, you know, almost numb ourselves to what our body is telling us, and maybe until it's too late. Back to, you know, what we were talking about last session about going into the red meter. So I think, you know, pain is there. We all feel it differently. Again, I think it depends on the individual. You know, one person's pain threshold will be very different. And maybe their pain story will be very, very different to another person. And you can't tell quite often from looking at somebody, unless they are, you know, really crippled with pain in an arthritic joint. You know, you really can't tell.
No.
So yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating how we do keep going back to this choice and awareness.
Yeah, I think the thing that you just talked about as well is we talked about that the rev counter with stress.
Yeah.
You know, so good stress and bad stress, and now we're talking about good pain and bad pain. And I think the analogy does cut across both, doesn't it? In terms of you know, the more, if for instance we've got an injury in our body, the more that we ignore that, the more that we're not aware of it, in terms of it's not about awareness. Actually, we know it's there sometimes, don't we? But we ignore it, we just push it away, rather than leaning into it, we move away from it. And often I think with pain and stress actually, but particularly because we're talking about pain today, what we do is we kind of go, I don't want that pain to be in my life, I'm going to ignore that pain, because if I acknowledge it, it's getting the better of me. So what I'll do instead is I'll ignore it, I'll pop it over there in a box somewhere, pretend that it's not happening to me, and then maybe it will go away. I think stress is quite similar to that actually. But the challenge with that is because we're turning away from it and we're not turning towards it, we're not actually allowing ourselves to feel the pain and be with the pain in a way that actually can be quite helpful, and can to some degree make it, relieve it. You know, it can relieve us from that pain. And I find that is a phenomenon, really.
It is phenomenal. I think it's around, so what I think I'm hearing you saying, or certainly what it's resonating for me, is around tension and tightness. And sometimes, you know, we can either, as you say, sort of, you know, choose to ignore it, but we can tighten rather than soften and open. And one of the things when I work with my clients, you know, one of the things we talk a lot about and we do a lot of work on is very much this opening to, softening to, noticing, releasing. Quite often with breathing, very, very simple. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be always about movement and yoga. Just because I teach yoga, I do a lot of other elements to the work that I do as well. And, breathing's so important. Sometimes when you breathe, if you stop for a moment on a really, really busy day, maybe actually you've stopped and you notice actually maybe your chest does feel quite tight. Maybe you feel quite tight around the collarbones because you've maybe been hunched over the keyboard.
Yeah.
You take these, maybe literally take a seat back and you breathe. You feel that tightness, but if you take a few more breaths and really ease into that and soften into that, and I think that's certainly what came up for me when you were talking through that was
Yeah.
it's very much about not tightening but opening and releasing the
Yeah.
tension. And for me, tension, pain, stress, they're sort of all orbiting in the same place. I think they correlate. I think when we get stressed, we get tense in the body. It can lead to pain over a long period of time. It can lead to trapped pain.
Yeah.
And certainly, what I see when I'm teaching yoga is that people's bodies change because that pain has really sort of locked itself into muscles. They've maybe not noticed it. Certainly, something like the psoas muscle
Yeah.
which we really tighten when we drive a lot or we sit a lot. It just needs to be, we just need to move so that we can release and soften and work into that muscle so that everything doesn't tighten and crunch and cause us pain.
Yeah, completely. I think, we're both talking from the same song sheet, as they say. When you just carry tension in your body. So we sit at, particularly over the last 12 months, and I know that people have been doing this for a lot longer. You're sitting at your laptop and you're beavering away, you feel quite happy, but what you're not noticing is what's going on, maybe, particularly for people that sit at laptops and desks all day, the neck muscles, the tension across the top of the shoulder there. Sometimes even, I would say actually more than sometimes, but in the face. So
Yeah.
in
And
the
particularly the
jaw.
jaw, this whole jaw area.
Yeah. And I think that what we're both talking about here is that you can go through your whole day and not notice or be aware of the fact that you've got this tension in your neck, tension in the shoulders, something going on in the jaw, maybe the chin, around the eyes, into the brow, let's say, or into the furrowness of this part of my head, which then carries across here into the temples. And I can go through my day and finish my day barely moving, and this is rhetorical, right? Barely moving, and at the end of the day, probably feel okay-ish, maybe a bit sluggish. Do the thing that I would normally do in the evening, again rhetorically, eat my dinner, maybe have a shower, go to bed, right? Get up, do exactly the same thing next day, and so on and so on and so on, and this continues to play out. But the thing that I challenge a lot of people with, Bridget, is that just for a minute, if we were to just sit and bring that awareness, so nurture that sense of awareness around the neck, the shoulders, the face, including the jaw, and we were to just sit for 2 minutes and just let all that go, would the body feel differently? Would the body feel differently? And I think, and I believe, actually strongly believe, that it's going to be 100% of people would say yes, it feels differently. And it's because they don't know that actually what they're doing is sitting like this and they're typing away, right? And until you bring that awareness to it, you're not going to release that down. You're not going to let that soften, as you say. I love that word, soften and soothe in a way that brings that sense of more supportiveness, I suppose, more yes, like a more supportive posture, a more supportive body. So until we bring attention to it, we're not going to know that we're so tight and tense. But we just do that every day, don't we? Every day, every day,
It's
every day.
cumulative. Again, it's a
Yeah.
cumulative effect, I think. And I think it's not waiting till we move into that red zone.
Exactly. And then before we know it, we go into the doctors, we've got a pain going on in our neck that we can't resolve. And that's stopping me from sleeping, right? That I'm not getting my sleep now. And then that's disturbing my my ability to do my job. And then that's making me really upset. And guess where that goes? I start to get really stressed out. And it's that accumulation, it's that rev counter the whole time, isn't it?
It is. So one of the things I really love to challenge people to do through their day, it's one of the things that I talk to quite a few of my clients about. Again, it's this awareness, it's choosing to do it, but just a really simple question, just asking yourself, how am I feeling right now?
Yeah.
And repeating that maybe 4 or 5 times at different points during the day. It could be as you're, walking to make a cup of coffee, put the kettle on, maybe get a glass of water. But how am I feeling right now? And the crucial thing, listening for the answer.
Yeah.
And almost seeing if you can sense the answer in the body rather than, how am I feeling right? Oh, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
okay. Oh
absolutely.
my God.
Yeah.
I can go another hour now on this report. Well, actually, no. Actually, my hip feels quite sore. My lower back, feels sore and tight, as you say, the jaw. Now I stop to think about it. I've been gritting my teeth. My jaw feels tight. My shoulders feel tight. Actually, why don't I do something about that? That's not okay.
So let's just do that again. So what's the 2 questions? Just do those again. So I think this is so useful for people watching.
So how am I right now?
Yeah. How am I right now?
How am I right now? How does my body feel right now? Or how am I feeling right now? However you want to phrase it, really. How I normally say to myself, how am I feeling right now?
Yeah. And then
And certainly
really key,
really bring
listening to the response.
and listen. So again, one of the things I took when I work with my yoga students is, I say to them, it's not only important to ask that question, but listen, really listen. In coaching, we talk about third level listening, and it's almost like that with the body. You really need to listen with the body, sense the body, the feet, the legs, the shoulders, the head. Okay, if you get a thumbs up, great. If you're getting, tight shoulders or, feeling tight in the calves or the hips, you need to do something about it.
Yeah.
And you need to listen to the body. And it's just a really quick way, 4 or 5 times a day.
Yeah.
How am I feeling right now?
Yeah. And listen to the response.
And
Lovely.
listen for the response.
Yeah. Oh, Bridget, it's been fantastic listening to you and talking to you again today. And you've really given me a few things to think about, I have to say, you really have. And I think, you know what, even though I talk about this stuff all the time, I'm not an angel. I don't sit here with a halo. I make the mistakes. Where I get so engrossed in something that I forget to move about, and then I really pay for it in my neck. I really pay for it in that injury that I've got. Or maybe I'll tell you, one of the things I do notice is achy legs. I get jumpy, achy legs a lot from sitting down too
Jumpy,
much.
achy legs, absolutely. I think we all do. I don't think there is this perfect being out there. I think that's really important to just make a quick note on that. Yes, I'm trained with a lot of work with the body and also some of the mind as well. But I have off days, and I maybe spend too long at a laptop one day or one evening, and I really notice. The key is I really notice the difference.
Yeah.
Because I'm tuned into noticing the difference, and the more you get better at calibrating it and noticing it, the more obvious it becomes. I think that's the key for me, what I've really noticed. So yeah, we all have off days, but it'd be really interesting to know what our viewers think about pain in the body, good pain, bad pain, and what really works for them. What do they use something like that question, and what do they find when they ask that question? Do they listen to the answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a brilliant request, I think. So, as I said at the beginning, everybody, this is our 4th episode of the Mind Body Connective. So, if you've looked at the other episodes that came before episode 4, then, please do comment. Comment on anything that's come up for you, something that relates to you in terms of the way that you find ways to cope, or what you notice about your mind and your body, and particularly if there's anything that resonates in the conversations that Bridget and I are having on these sessions. But then secondly, so do find the time to comment, stick a comment on that chat for us, whether it's on LinkedIn or whether it's on YouTube. And then the second thing is, if you are watching via YouTube, do not forget to subscribe and like. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. This is episode 4, over and out, and we look forward to bringing you another discussion for the Mind Body Connective. Thanks, Bridget.
Thank you.